the building committee meeting date didn't get on the agenda because I just got it.
Thanks.
All right, I'd like to call to order this session of the regular meeting of the Abington School Committee for Tuesday, February 27th, 2018. We're at the Abington Middle High School Library, and it is just after 7 p.m. I would like everyone to stand for salute to the flag, and please remain standing afterwards for a moment of silence for those who lost their lives in Parkland, Florida. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, it's time for our hearing of visitors. I'd like to remind people, if you do have something that you want to say, to please come up front and give us your name and your address, and please wait to be recognized by the chair. Do we have anyone who would like to be heard this evening? I figured with such a large audience, we'd have a few. Yes?
We'll get to it on school security.
We will be dealing with that.
Yeah, I'll talk next.
Okay. There are copies of the agenda and a sign-in sheet over here if you could pick them up on your way in. If you didn't, you can go over and get one. We're going to start then with our reading and approval of records for January 23rd, 2018. Anyone have any changes, corrections, questions? All right, seeing none, could I get a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll make that motion.
And do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
And one abstain. All right, principal's report. Matt McCurtain, Abington Middle School.
Good evening. Each fall, middle schools across Massachusetts are asked to choose a representative to join a social project called Project 351. I was planning on delivering you all kinds of great information about Project 351, but our representative, Julia Wedge, who I've known for 4 years, and I told her I was going to say this, since she was the most energetic ponytail bouncing around the 5th grade dance. Julia is an amazing young woman and a student here in our 8th grade. Mr. Campbell is going to introduce Julia and tell you a little bit about the selection project for Project 351, and Julia will fill you in on what the Project 351 is and all that she plans to do this year.
Hey everyone, I'm Matt Campbell, 8th grade history teacher over at, not the Furlio, but the Abington Middle School. So earlier on this year, what we were asked to do as the 8th grade team, we were asked to select one student for this Project 351 that Julia is going to explain, but the following is the criteria for the ambassador, which Julia became. An 8th grade student that was in good standing, with inspiration and a unique passion and commitment to others and a cause greater than herself. This student has to exemplify the values of kindness, compassion, humility, and gratitude, have a strong potential and desire to lead, either quietly or as a mere active catalyst in the community. As well with their permission and support of their family and guardian, and reflect the rich diversity of the Commonwealth and of your community. There were a handful of names that we were looking at. We kind of looked at many of the 8th graders. Julia's name constantly came up to the top of the list. We went down to the 7th grade, talked to some 6th grade teachers, kind of mentioned Julia, and it was just hands down. They said that she would absolutely be a great choice. So for the last couple months, we've been asked to kind of put together a project that Julia is going to describe, but I just have to be honest, it's been an absolute honor and privilege to work alongside her. This is just a genuinely great person that really exemplifies everything I think this great community is all about. So Julia is here to talk about Project 351, kind of her experience with that, and then overall what the spring service project is going to do, which is going to benefit our community as long as kind of the entire Commonwealth. So I give you Ms. Julia Wedge.
Hi, I'm Julia Wedge, and I'm here to briefly talk about the community service project I'm doing called Cradles to Crayons. And I'm doing this through Project 351 with the help of the Abington Middle School. Project 351 is a non-profit organization that develops a new generation of community-first service leaders through the year-long engagement of an 8th grade ambassador from every city and town in Massachusetts. I was selected by local educators for the demonstrated values of my kindness, compassion, humility, and gratitude, and exemplary ethic of service. Project 351 encourages the recognition of unsung heroes and quiet leaders as it strives to foster unity and opportunity through ambassador-led service. A problem in our society is that more than 305,000 Massachusetts children 12 years and younger live in low-income or poverty-stricken households. In any given year, more than 100,000 of them will experience homelessness. Thanks to Cradles to Crayons, this problem can be solved. I am partnering up with Cradles to Crayons. Cradles to Crayons provides children from birth through age 12 living in homeless or low-income situations with the essential items they need to thrive, at home, at school, and at play. We supply these items free of charge by engaging and connecting communities with communities that need. We're going to help the kids that don't have shoes to fit, or a coat warm enough to fend off winter winds, or a backpack to carry their school books and supplies. Without these basics, they suffer. They don't want to go to school. They have a hard time learning in school. They don't want to go outside and play. They don't feel valued. From March 26th through April 6th, I will coordinate a clothing donation drive at Abington Middle School for Cradles to Crayons. Bins will be placed in the middle school cafeteria for our hundreds of students to donate. We're collecting gently used and like-new clothing and shoes for our children, mostly youth sizes and adult smalls and mediums, as long as the style and design is appropriate for middle school and younger. Footwear sizes are from infant to an adult size 10. To communicate this, I'm going to be hanging up posters, making announcements, making a video, and showing a slideshow in the front of the building, and making something to show on the Abington local TV station, and just word of mouth, spreading the word to my friends and other kids in my school. And yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. You did a wonderful job presenting it, and it sounds like a wonderful program. And I've heard many wonderful things about Project 351.
Thank you.
Anyone have anything else they wanted to? Matt?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, report of subcommittees, the Business and Finance Subcommittee. I'm going to turn this over to Peter.
So I want to thank Chris and Mike, the subcommittee members, and I'll just give an overview, and then I'll ask them if they've got anything that they want to add to this. The update in terms of the work around our FY19 budget is that we are cautiously, and I'm picking these words very, very carefully, because words are important here. We are cautiously optimistic that out of one-time funds, Abington will be able to, the community of Abington will be able to front the money for a full, free, all-day kindergarten program. Cautiously optimistic that out of one-time funds in the community that Abington will be able to fund the startup costs for a full free-day kindergarten for next year. The reason that we can't be certain is that we're still not done with the budget process. The accumulation of these one-time funds in the community relies on budget forecasting from a variety of different sources. And then in subsequent years, we believe that the Chapter 70 funding that we'll get, the reimbursement from the state of Massachusetts to continue to fund the full-day program. As we close out the budget process, as we get closer to town meeting, it will become clearer and clearer. So you don't want to add an operational cost. That's a cost that you have year after year after year unless you have the available funds to continue to fund it. And the way that the funding works in Massachusetts is that you get reimbursement after you have the program. So it's significant that at this time, those funds are available to get it started, and then the funds would be there in terms of reimbursement from the state for years that follow. And that's why there's, all of those things need to be in alignment though, and that's why I'm cautiously optimistic, because as we talk in our budget meetings, everything costs money. When it snows, it costs the town money to remove that snow. When it's a colder winter than usual, it costs money to heat buildings. The estimates on the taxes that are collected in town continue to get updated as you get further and further in a fiscal year, and those become clearer and clearer. And we just, we hope that those things continue to go our way, but you can't be certain of those things till you get to the end of the budget process. We're also, as a part of this building project, we are going to be implementing, the money is there, one-time funds again, for us to implement a one-to-one computer initiative at the secondary level, likely grades 7 through 12. That means our students will all have laptops, 7 through 12. At the elementary level, we will be about, or we are already at about a 2-to-1 level. So the improvements at the secondary level also help the elementary level because those resources can be moved around. Whether our students have the benefit of 2-to-1 or 1-to-1, it still requires operational money to support that effort, to make sure that we do that right, do that well, do that as best we can, because it's a waste of money to give children laptops and not maximize the use of those by having the ability to improve teaching and learning and the delivery of education using those in the classroom, by having the availability for break fix, to fix them, to keep them running, the software. There's still operational money in there. So those things are still in our budget. Both the elementary and the secondary level are going to need support with that. That's what I have for an update for you. All of our documents are online in terms of the full budget package at this point, but that's a preliminary budget package if you're interested. And I'm available for any questions. And I want to again thank Chris and Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I was part of one of the meeting with some town representatives, town manager. I think the acronym was Finance Officer Group. It was FOG. So, I mean, I was part of that, and to Peter's point, that was the discussion. It's cautious optimism about the one-time funds. That was the biggest conversation that day that I was there, about the funding of the full-day kindergarten. But it's a process and it's ongoing, so.
Thank you. All right, next we're looking at the policy review and update subcommittee, which is myself and Wendy. We met, and you can see there were 4 different policies here that we looked at and discussed. The first being, and you'll find it in your packets, the consideration of a memorandum of understanding with the Abington Police Department. This document has been reviewed by Town Council, and I'll turn it over to Peter to.
So the reason you don't, we currently have a memorandum of understanding with the Abington Police Department, and just so people are aware, what is this? This is the agreement that provides specifics around the reporting of information back and forth, how we respond to potential crime and crime, including a topic that we're going to talk about a little bit later, threats or risks that our kids have with what could be some of the terrible tragedies that we've seen around our country. I didn't give you a version that shows you the changes compared to what we currently have, because there are so many changes. This has gone through an extensive revamping. I do want to note something that's critical in this is item number 20. And that's that the Abington, and it's going to come up later in our conversation, the Abington Police Department is considered the Abington Public Schools Law Enforcement Unit as defined by the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA, 20 U.S.C. Section 1232G and 34 CFR of Section 99, for the purposes of sharing information regarding students. The SRO, which is our school resource officer, that's a police officer, who is a professional designated by the Abington Public Schools, shall be considered a school official pursuant to 34 CFR Section 99, and an authorized school personnel pursuant to 603 CMR. That means that they're eligible for access for records of students who he or she provides services in order to promote school safety and the physical security of the students, subject to disclosure requirements and the limits of that said law, anytime the school resource officer requests and provided private school records, he or she shall fully document the reason for the request in a report approved by a police supervisor. So the sharing of information between a school department and a police department is critical to creating the safest environment possible. There is no way to guarantee that we are ever absolutely safe, but that's the best way to keep us the safest, by knowing that you're never completely safe. This allows the school department and the police department to exchange information more readily without some of the privacy concerns that can get things tangled up. Having said that, we've already been sharing information prior to this. This MOU goes further than probably MOUs that you'll see in other districts in relationship with police departments, that it documents that and provides protection. So I just wanted to point that out to people as a major change, and it has been reviewed by town council.
Does anyone have any questions?
No, I think it's been reviewed by town council.
All right, in that respect then, I would be looking for a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between the Abington School Department and Abington Police Department as presented.
Make a motion.
And could I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. The next policy we're looking at is a policy that Wendy brought to our attention and we worked on together. So I'm going to ask Wendy if she'd like to explain what she's brought forward here.
Sure. So this is a proposed pilot program policy or document. So I'm seeking approval from our school committee to add the following proposed pilot program document to our policy. And I'll read it for those in the audience and at home. The Abington Public Schools will not administer any optional state or federal pilot programs regarding, but not limited to, academics, health, or behavior without the consent of the Abington School Committee. If the Abington School Committee approves the administration of a pilot program, parents, guardians of all students will be notified so that parents and guardians may make the final decision concerning their child's participation. And the reason why I wanted to add this document to our policy was partly due to last year how DESE wanted to add a questionnaire to the MCAS test, and I thought it was too long and in-depth. And then another reason is a few years ago, some of our classes were asked by DESE to take both the MCAS and the PARC test, and we never ended up going with the PARC test. So it was just a big waste of time, kind of. So I just think that the school committee should actually know more about any new pilots that are coming down the line, and parents as well, so that we can be made aware and we can make the right decisions for our students.
All right, the other thing to pay attention to here is that it says optional state or federal pilot programs. There are often pilot programs that we get from the state that we are required to do. So this is for things that are optional. We also, after discussing it and putting this together, the superintendent contacted DESE to make sure that this is something that would not conflict with their policies. So, anyone else have any questions? All right, we'd be looking for a motion to approve the policy on DESE pilot programs as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. We have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, now we're looking at consideration of an amendment to policy JKAA, physical restraint of students.
So what this basically does is updates our language to be current with the practice. We're going through a coordinated program review. Something that was noticed by DESE as they looked at our documents was that we had language here about mechanical or chemical restraints. We don't do that. When a child is in crisis, we don't use chemical or mechanical means to restrain them. And our policy our policy said the use of these restraints is prohibited unless explicitly authorized by a physician and approved by the parent. Well, we still don't do it. And so the suggestion is to remove that. It's not a problem, we're not doing it. And then a definition of chemical restraint is below. And that's the change in that document. And then additional to that is similar, though, at the end. And in special circumstances, waivers may be sought from parents, either through individual IEPs or from parents of students who present a high risk of frequent dangerous behavior. We don't do that either. So those are suggested changes that I'd recommend to you.
Anyone have any questions?
I just have a quick question. Peter, so is the fact it's being removed, is the definitions just there to keep the like will the definitions of mechanical and seclusion stay there? Or they just there for?
It'll look exactly the way it reads here with the crossed out pieces gone. The reason mechanical is there because it delineates that some devices restrict the movement of a student that are assistive to a function of their body part.
Okay.
So that's separating that from the restraint of a student because they're need to be restrained.
Okay. But is this saying we're taking, so we're saying that mechanical and seclusion is not prohibited no matter what?
We are saying with regard to mechanical restraint,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so is there a reason why it still stays in as far as like, should that definition of it be crossed out to that whole paragraph below? I guess that's what
I think that the reason it would stay is, so with regard to seclusion restraint, I think it's trying to delineate the difference between that and a timeout.
Okay. Okay.
Do you see what I mean?
I do, yeah, I see seclusion, yeah.
And then the mechanical is the reason for the definition is to delineate the difference between a student that needs a mechanical restraint as an assistive device to walk or to function from mechanical restraint.
Okay.
And it doesn't do a great job of that
Okay.
as you look at it, but that's, I think, the intention.
Okay.
The law was also written not just for public schools, it's also for collaboratives and private. And so when they originally wrote it, they wrote it broadly.
Yeah.
And now with the coordinated program review at our orientation, because it doesn't pertain to us, now we can remove that.
Okay.
But the language still is the law. So
Okay,
you need to
okay.
have that definition.
Okay. That clears up, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll be looking for a motion to approve the amendment to policy JKAA, physical restraint of students as presented.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's unanimous. The final policy that we're looking at tonight, consideration of an amendment to policy IJ, instructional materials. We're just looking at basically some wording changes in this document.
So as you look at this, the item 5, instead of saying physical disabilities, it should better read disabilities, and then also add to it a homelessness status as a protected group. Those are the only 2 changes.
All right, any questions? All right, we're looking for a motion to approve the amendment to policy IJ, instructional materials as presented.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Do we have someone to second?
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's unanimous. All right, we're moving on to the report of the superintendent of schools, and we're looking at the superintendent of schools goals for 2018. These were presented to you at our last meeting, and we tabled the vote on it. to give everyone a chance to review them. Does anyone have any questions for Peter?
Kathy, I just had one, and Peter and I have discussed this too, but it was in the last goal, it was the fourth, under demonstrate and improve district and school lines of communication. It was just maybe more calling out as far as like social networking. It seems, I don't know, the town parents use Facebook as a means to get a lot of information, and it would just be good if the school department had its official Facebook page so we have official answers instead of different answers that aren't right or people's opinions, and they could just go to one place. And maybe it's not even set up to be a Q&A as much as, or a comment, but as much as just to provide the information. And you can go about asking the questions the same way you do now, through an email, through a phone call, but have the information there so they can go to that page, per se. They're just more calling out Facebook as a social network.
I think that's a little restrictive because just personally, I mean, Facebook, technology changes so rapidly. Like, I think now I tend to look to Twitter more and more because it seems more like in the moment than Facebook. Too. But it's just, I wonder, just saying Facebook, are we limiting ourselves
I guess I don't even need it in there written like that. It was just more of an idea, just based on what I see parents and community members, at least that I interact with more, seem to go to. So it's more of what I see more. And it was not necessarily to be written in there, but it was just more to call out the idea of it.
So in terms of thinking about this, I can certainly set up a district Facebook page. So a concern that I have is that I think it would be wrong, though, for me to be getting messages through Facebook from parents who have concerns.
I agree.
Because I can think of something happened a couple of months ago. There was a parent looking for a child who didn't get off the bus. And I don't even know who this is, so maybe I shouldn't give this example. They may be here because I don't know who the parent was. But the child didn't get off a bus, so they went to Facebook and they said, I'm looking, has anybody seen my kid on the Facebook page, rather than calling the school department? I had somebody else who was on Facebook call me and say, Peter, did you know somebody's looking for their child? And I'm glad that they did. So I just, if we create this, you saw how the FBI lost a communication somehow in terms of reporting something that might have saved some lives. And for me, if you've got something you need to report to me, I need a phone call. I don't need people on Facebook. I need a secure line of communication that I can count on, because if I'm checking my messages and on my phone, and I'm checking my email, and I'm checking my Facebook, and I'm checking my Twitter, and I'm getting there's a lost child off of 3 different sources like that, I'm not finding them as quickly as we can. People can send those messages and think I'm going to get them. So if I did set up something as a district page, I would want it to be one way pushing information out on Facebook. Certainly I can do that. And I want to continue to encourage people to use the old-fashioned pick up the phone when you have a crisis.
I think to have something like that as a means of two-way communication, we'd have to have a media specialist that was monitoring that the entire time school's open.
No, yeah, it wasn't. That's why I specifically said almost it wouldn't be for two-way communication. It would, I guess I would phrase the question this way then. What is the online social networking?
It's Facebook, it's Twitter, it's what you're describing, or it's like Jeanette said, it's what's going to happen next month, because it's always evolving. I'm not going to do Snapchat,
Thank God.
but I will do a Facebook page, and I can also connect the other school buildings that have Facebook pages to that district Facebook page. So.
All right. Is there any other questions? All right, then we'll be looking for a motion to accept the Superintendent of Schools 2018 goals as presented.
I'll make that motion.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I know that people spent a lot of time on this, and it's been discussed at a couple of meetings.
All right, next, hazard response discussion. Peter?
Yeah. So the front and center issue, obviously, is student safety. And everybody here wants to make sure that it never happens again anywhere. But we want to make sure it doesn't happen here. So I'm going to give off a list of things that we're doing to try to keep us as safe as we can be. I'm going to talk about some additional things that we're going to be doing to keep us as safe as we can be. But the most important thing I'm going to mention, I'm going to say it a couple of times, is communication follow-up, communication follow-up, and communication and follow-up are the things that keep us the safest, because those are the things that will prevent a tragedy occurring, or best prevents a tragedy from occurring. So we have an armed school resource officer. That's, you're going to hear the term SRO a lot. That's a police officer. The Abington Public Schools has that program in place. It was and it is currently funded through a grant program. In the town budget is continuing that program in the coming years. So that does a lot for us in the Abington Public Schools. So we have a variety of different buildings at a variety of different levels. They can't be everywhere at the same time. They also have shifts that they're following. But they can be here quite a bit. They have been, and they have been more and more and more as these things in our country evolve. They, through the town budget, will be committed to us. And that's an armed police officer, fully trained, fully equipped, armed police officer. But it's most important to have that person with us, because I'm going to go back to communication follow-up, communication follow-up, communication and follow-up. Having them involved with our administration, who communicates and follows up and communicates and follows up all the time, is critical, because that means we're communicating back and forth hazards and threats to the police department from a variety of places and variety of sources. So as it stands today, it could be 10 o'clock on a Saturday and we're texting back and forth with the police department, with the administration of the Abington Public Schools. Had a meeting with the chief and the deputy chief today, and I said, how far do you want me to go with sharing information? They said, share it all. And that happens today. That's already in place. That's not because we have a new memo, a memorandum of understanding. That's already in place. And so in Massachusetts, it's different than Florida, is the police department here can take people's weapons away if they feel that they're unsafe. The Abington Police Department has done that. They do that. And he may have the NRA lined up outside his door at Abington Police Department tomorrow morning, but that happens here in Massachusetts. They can go into homes, they can search homes, they can make sure that the weapons that are there are secured. And that's the follow-up that I'm talking about. Communication and follow-up, communication and follow-up. That's what keeps us safest. So having that SRO embedded in our schools means that our administrators are able to have those face-to-face conversations with the police department. It's better than picking up the phone. So that happens daily or weekly, depending on need. And then we have also already had in place that my office, it's generally Felicia, sometimes it's Felicia and I, meets with the police department weekly. That's already in place. And that's how we help manage the school resource officer program and any other things that are going on. We're working with the police department to try to get some proactive things set up, and that's what those meetings do. Our responses are coordinated with the Abington Police Department. So right now we have an emergency response plan, and we drill those procedures in the event of a threat. We drill them at least twice a year, along with the fire drills, along with school bus evacuations. We drill our hazardous response plan in each building twice a year. This year, we've coordinated that with the police department, and they're involved in those drills. That's already been happening. That's already in place. Those were reviewed and updated this summer as we moved into this new building. And significantly, we have a crisis team that meets here in the building. We have a student support team that meets here in the building. Those are school professionals that meet and talk about kids that are having difficulties and that are in crisis. They meet, there's a standing meeting every single week, and there's a meeting that happens like this if it needs to happen faster. And I'm going to get back to when there's someone in crisis, it's the responsible communications about those individuals occur, and then there's follow-up, and then there's communication, and then there's follow-up. So there are other things in place, but that's the thing that keeps a school and a community the safest. Just knowing your kids, knowing your families, and that constant communication and interaction with other emergency responders and services like the police department, and follow-up to make sure that things don't go unchecked. And I've already noted a couple of things that are different than between here and Florida. That does not mean that I think for a second that there's absolutes and we're completely safe. We're not. Nobody is. And I hate that feeling, and we all do. But I'm lucky. I work with administrators who follow up and follow up and follow up because I know it keeps them up at night, and I know they worry about it the way that everybody does. Because you never want to have to think back and say that you didn't do everything humanly possible to make sure that the worst doesn't happen. So on top of that, back at the beginning of this school year, we decided to look at a program called ALICE. ALICE stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. So I'm not going to go into too much information about our current plan. You can imagine, and you basically know what lockdown is. Everybody knows what that is. The doors are locked. People find safety in the room, and they don't move. That's lockdown. The ALICE program provides additions to that give people more freedom in a lockdown situation depending on what's going on outside their room. So you go through a training where people are taught, you can break out the window and throw something over the glass and escape out the window. You can wedge a door so it's harder to open even though our door's locked. You can barricade, you can tie your belt to the doorknob and hold it shut. And then, any object in a room is something that you could throw at someone who is going to do harm and distract them. We are not going to have armed teachers in Massachusetts. I've gotten questions this last week about that. Not only would they have to change all the laws about people carrying guns in schools, because unless you're a police officer in Massachusetts, you can't have a gun in a school or around a school. But we can do things like implement the ALICE program. So it's interesting that only 25% of schools in America have implemented ALICE. There's been a lot of talk about why hasn't this been done, why hasn't this been done. We're in the process of doing it. We've been in the process of doing it since the beginning of the year. It takes time to do it right. If you do this and you don't do it right, you're less safe, because it involves creating a new emergency plan, because you have to think about your buildings differently. It involves evaluating your building for that plan. We've already had every single administrator in the Abington Public Schools trained. We finished that training last week. The police department has had 5 police officers trained. There's also an online learning component that people take, and they learn about it. There are PowerPoint presentations that people go through, and then there are drills and there are practice sessions that faculty go through, and then ultimately what you try to do is get all of your kids trained at it. And that training is very different for a first grader than it is for a high school student, and it has to be done in a very sensitive way because of the differences in ages and capacities for this. So we're hopeful that we're going to be working on that new emergency operation plan. As I speak, we're going to begin to look at those plans. We're going to be doing the facility evaluations with the administrators, with the police department, with the fire department. I'm probably going to come back to the next school committee meeting and ask you for 2 additional half-days this school year so we can train our staffs. The current half-days we have are completely booked. So I need to ask you for the additional days, because if we're doing our jobs with the days you've already given us, they're already booked. And then we're going to talk later about how and when and where we're going to train our students. Is that at the end of this year, or is that at the beginning of next year? Either way, that's actually a fast track for the implementation of ALICE. So having said that, there are a lot of places that say they're full ALICE. They're not. They're saying that. They've talked about it, they've trained some staff, they've trained the administration, they haven't trained all of the kids, they haven't trained all the faculty, they've trained the faculty but not the kids. It's all over the place. We want to do it thoughtfully, we want to do it the right way, and so that's why we're doing it this way. And again, we currently have plans in place that we've reviewed, coordinated, and drilled with the emergency responders. And if you put something in place without doing it in coordination with the emergency responders, they don't know how you're following through on your drills. We need to involve the fire department. We need to involve the police department in these things. And so that all will and is being coordinated. There are other things that we have that I've saved for the committee for an executive session. And I want to be able to answer everybody's questions about what we're doing to keep people safe. But there's other components that I won't, and I don't feel it's appropriate to share publicly. And that's because if you are someone planning to hurt kids in a school, I don't need to make it easier by telling you what other things we have in place. So I'll give you an obvious example. We have a camera system around our buildings, especially this building. I don't want to tell people exactly how that works and where those are and all of those things, because if I was a bad person who was going to hurt people, I'd be helping you, or they'd be helping me if you told me exactly how that works and how those are. There are other items like that I'm not going to be public about, and that's why they're safe for executive session. So I'm going to go back to what I said. The thing that keeps us the safest is the communication, the follow-up, the communication, and the follow-up. That's been going on. That doesn't mean that there are absolutes. And have I forgotten anything? So I want to answer any questions.
First of all, the committee have any questions for Peter?
I don't right now.
No.
Okay. Does anyone in the audience have anything that they'd like to ask? Yes. Could you tell us who you are and where you come from?
I'm Natasha Brown. I'm a mother of a second grader. How many SROs do we have? I'm not sure.
We currently have 2. What's been happening is at any one time, 1 has really been available in buildings the majority of the time. For the coming years, the town is funding 1.
Okay. And they patrol. How does that work? Do they patrol? Do they?
So we want to have them in all buildings. The goal is to have them at the entrance of school. They haven't been doing that up until recently, being here at the entrance of school when the high school and the middle school starts, because of a shift situation they have with the police shifts and how the shifts work. The chief is trying to change that. What we want to have happen is have them be here for this building's entrance with our high school. Then the plan is for them to go to the roll call at the police department, and then to come back from the roll call at the police department so that they're connected with other officers and what's going on, and then come back here and then follow the rest of the progression of the district through the schedule of a school day. So then they'd go to the Woodsdale for the Woodsdale entrance, and then the Beaverbrook, and then the middle school. Sorry, it's high school, middle school, Woodsdale, Beaverbrook, in that order.
So they go back and forth every single time?
Yeah, I mean, they've got a cruiser, and you're paying for their gas.
It just seems there's a lot of extra work for the officer, though. Wouldn't it be easier to just use the radio?
Well, I think having a presence and being at some of these school meetings face-to-face with principals and talking is important,
Yeah.
so they can get information and talk back and forth about what's going on in the building. So they may spend a whole day here one day, and they may be in a variety of buildings another day.
Okay.
So there's no set daily patrol route for them. There would be, what we're setting up, it's a different scheduled meetings, but we've got to get around the shift situation in the coming weeks. Thank you for the question.
Does anyone else have a question?
Yeah.
I didn't know what they did.
No, I appreciate it, because you say SRO and people don't understand it's a police officer.
Yeah.
And how would you unless somebody told you what it is?
Does anyone else have a question?
Good evening, everyone. Please
Yeah,
stand with it.
thanks.
So my name's Ron Solomon. I'm a town resident. I have a sixth grader, fourth grader. I'm a law enforcement professional. I'm not a security expert, but I have a vested interest in security and my law enforcement career. My brother's also a resident law enforcement professional. Excuse me. So I get about 20 years in law enforcement. So I'm going to talk with that for a little bit. So with that being said, I agree with you, Pete. The police department, the schools, they can't be everywhere, we can't be safe at all times. That's a 100% correct statement. We have to portray that, or at least hopefully seem like we are. So with that said, I have some questions, comments, and concerns. The police department does what they can in this town. They do a good job for what they have within the budget. But at any given time, I don't know if the residents know this or everyone else, the taxpayers, at any given time, there's only one supervisor on the street and 2 patrolmen. So God forbid something big does happen in this town, I really don't know if we're fully equipped to handle it. That's not a knock on the police department. They do a great job. I know the chief myself. I've had conversations about things. I said, I'm a police officer. They do a good job, but I just don't know what the numbers-wise if it works. So as far as that, and you mentioned the school resource officers, I know we have one. It's my understanding there's a grant that he has for 2. And we're not using it. He's not using the second one. And if we're gonna sit and have a serious conversation about school safety and hazard situations, how come there's no one from the police department here tonight?
You'd have to ask the police department that question.
But you have a memorandum
Yeah.
with the police department that you guys are communicating back and forth. Wouldn't that be something you should request and ask someone to be here?
Yeah, that would.
I mean, it only makes sense.
Yep. And with the 1 versus 2, that would also be an assignment piece that the chief would have to answer.
There's a federal grant for 2 patrol officers, school resource officers for 3 years.
And I said that, and I said we've been seeing 1.
We've seen one.
No, I know, that's
When I said, just a moment ago, I said that.
Yep, absolutely correct.
But shouldn't that be fixed? Again, we have a memorandum of understanding. He does a grant for 2. Supposed to be working hand in hand.
I feel like he's shutting the school, our kids down. I have 2 young kids at school. I have niece and nephew at school. I know what goes on, I see it, I lived it. So I know there's 2 federal grant that's supposed to be dedicated to our children every day. I have 2 kids, 2 different schools every morning. I drop off, I'm not gonna see 1.
So
I pick up my niece or my nephew, again, Alicia, she's phenomenal. I've been with her in training. She's absolutely great to talk to. And I expressed my concerns to her that what I see in all our parents, mothers, fathers, we all hang at the playground, we all see the same thing. It's nothing. We don't see anybody. And that's one day, one of my kids can get hurt.
So in the town budget, there is funding for 1 going forward. There aren't 2 in the town budget. I can't control the police department's budget. So I'm just being full disclosure, just telling you. I understand that. And in terms of the federal grant, the assignment of their time rests with the police department. So in terms of what you said about resources in town, I can't agree with you more that they're stretched so very thin. Something
So I
that,
have a question for you.
I just want to mention that their rules around coming into a school is they're going to go in immediately with one person. I'm not saying that there aren't enough people, but they are going to go in with their rules of engagement being one. God bless the person that comes to a
No,
school.
I trust me, I know how the rules work. We both do that for a living.
When this grant's up and over, are we, taxpayers, are we gonna be able to support 2 officers for the schools still? Is that, can be a suggestion from the committee?
I know that there's funding in the town right now for one. That's all
That grant's
that's all I can answer. That's all I know. That the police department and the town office has funded one in their current budget plan for the coming year.
Okay. My other question was, so, like you said, the unfortunate shooting in Florida. My kids saw it in the news, I'm sure, like parents, kids saw it in the news. Not that it's an all be safe type of thing, but were there any police officers at the schools the following day after the Florida shooting in our town? Was it requested by you at all?
I believe we had our SRO here. I did not request additional police officers following the shooting. That's the truth.
No, that's fine. Thanks for the candid answer, but don't you think, again, to make the kids safe, make parents feel safe, again, I'm not saying it's gonna happen, when it's gonna happen, but my daughter unfortunately, she saw the news. I had to shut it off. But again, that's a step that we can take as a community, as a school board. As a superintendent, you should be requesting to the chief, hey, this just went down, can you have some presence more on the schools on this day? I know you're doing it now, but the day after that shooting, you know, everyone knows the copycat scenario. People call, you saw in the news, people calling in the schools, the rest of those kids over in Rockland.
Yeah.
These are just different steps that we can take.
You're never going to hear me not want more police presence in the schools.
But I know if it did happen though.
Yeah. I did not ask them following the shooting for additional police officers here.
My other comment, when was the last time in the PD that you maybe requested any active shooter training in the schools? Has the police department had any?
They have.
In this brand new school?
They tour it, and then they've been doing the drills in other buildings, because breaching a classroom, you're the expert, breaching a classroom, and if you know the layout of this building and you know how to breach a classroom, what a classroom looks like, that's what they've been doing in other buildings. So they haven't done the breaching in this building.
Yeah, why?
But they've done the breaching in other buildings, and then they're spending a lot of time understanding the layout of this building. They've all toured it, they tour it all the time.
All right, but my question is, have they done active shooter in this? Because if it's gonna happen, unfortunately, it's gonna happen in this building most likely. So, the active shooter training, have you ever been through it?
I am a certified, I'm a Alice trainer now.
No, not Alice, active shooter training.
No, I have not. As in what capacity? What do you
Have we
want?
given the police department, our officers in this community, access to our schools?
Yes.
This school, legitimately, this nice new school, our officers been here to train active shooting with sim rounds and stuff that go in?
They have not done that training in this building. They've done that training in other buildings, and they've toured this building.
What other buildings have it been in?
They've used the center, and the Frollo and the North School in previous years. Recently, they've used the Frollo.
Okay, so the Foyle School's not active students in there, is that correct?
That's correct.
So why would we use a vacant building to train our kids?
They were using that. I don't want to answer for the police
Okay,
department.
well, we're giving
But
that, you give access to the police department?
100%,
Okay.
24/7. They can come in anytime they want.
And use sim rounds for active shooter training?
They did that.
No.
In this building? Yeah.
Will you allow the school police
Yes.
department to come here and do active shooter training using simulation rounds?
Yes.
But are you asking
When
with students
schools
and
and
those
state-
students?
Oh, that's not, they're not gonna do it with kids here.
No, okay, it's a training scenario for the police officer, so they understand the layout. It's a very intense,
So we have a emergency situation, and there is there's somebody in here.
Right.
Okay, right. Police department, PD will come here and breach the door, get in here and do what they have to do. It's
real life training under duress. So they
Right,
should
but-
be.
And
But
I'm
what
saying
he's
that they
saying is
have
we-
done that training in other buildings, but they haven't done it here, and yes, they could do it here if they want to.
Okay, so that's all. All right.
So a lot of these questions, I feel are better answered by the police department. than
Well, you
we-
run the schools. but they're not here.
You'd have to, again, that's another question I'd want to ask.
Again, I'm not knocking the police department, I'm just asking these questions, because you gave us the MOU. So,
Our police department does a wonderful job of what they have. They're so understaffed, underpaid, that these guys just are stressed out and work too much, to get forced too much. So these guys are protecting our
I don't know
kids.
who's, they're
So
probably,
we all
I
have
mean,
kids
they're
there.
feeling they're probably
I'm
people
looking
in
for
the
that,
town,
but
you know what I mean? So,
what about, have we looked into doing like random searches in the schools, like having canines come in and do random searches?
we've done that in previous years, we haven't done that recently. It's, there's a question as to whether or not it's effective or not. Because when, in terms of the rules around dogs, when you don't find something, it creates a false sense of confidence that whether you have dogs or not, they're coming in, they're not gonna find something. In other words,
I know what
there are
you
more
mean, but
drug
it's-
dogs than they are.
Yeah, but that's more for a police thing. I mean, you do your random searches for narcotics or firearm in schools.
They're not random searches, there's a burden of, what's the burden of a reasonable cause before an administrator can search a student. Those things are done all the time.
I think in school administration, you can call and you can do a random sweep of your school for a drug search or a,
Right, well, there's a variety of searches. We've done dog searches for drugs in the past.
when was the last time we did that?
Tara, help me, 2 years ago, 3 years, I don't know. 3 years ago? Those are not all that effective.
Well, again, my thing, I'm throwing out comments, questions,
Yep.
and concerns. Again,
And I'm
not
trying to answer
saying
them.
all these answers or these are end-all be-alls, but it's portraying something. Like I said, we can't guarantee our safety 100%. But you do something like that every once in a while,
Yep.
showing at least you're trying, and it's gonna throw maybe some kid that's thinking about something that could throw him off.
So also, because of the way it's done, because dogs can nip at kids, the kids are separated from the dogs and the dogs go through the building. And then when the dogs,
I've never, in all my years of law enforcement, never seen that.
they're passive dogs for canine that just goes to narcotics, and they're not buying dogs.
okay, but I'm telling you, in terms of the way attorneys and schools do canine searches, that's how canine searches are done in Massachusetts schools. The kids sit in a room, the dogs go through the building, the dogs don't sniff kids' pockets, and they sniff the lockers, they sniff the cars.
Right. Well, then why can't we do something like that?
We did that a couple of years ago, and when,
Again, I'm just saying, this is suggesting the climate's changed. I'm
I'd
just saying-
rather answer that question off camera for the benefit of any people watching.
Okay.
Well, because if the kid's got the drugs in his shorts, the dogs aren't gonna find it.
Well, that's great, they don't bring them to school then.
Again, we're trying to portray safety, is what I'm trying to portray.
Right.
Act like we're doing something, act like we care as a community.
Well, we're not acting, we do care.
We do care.
No, I probably the wrong choice of words.
Yes.
Care quite a bit, and administrators do searches of our students once they have a reasonable suspicion, whenever there's a reasonable suspicion.
I do think we could say that we've brought up some of the points that you've brought up, and what you're clearly articulating is they are grossly understaffed. And we agree with you.
Well, yeah, I'm not
But,
saying, like I said, they do a great job.
we
with what
ask
they have.
them, right, they do a great job with what they have. But what they have is the key phrase there.
But there's no
Because we
time.
can ask them to do all of that, and the chief will articulate why he can't. And a lot of it is because of staffing, or lack thereof.
There's outside resources.
And the federal grant, you're absolutely right, we've already asked those questions, like, we're supposed to get 2, we have 1. You know, there's, and not that I need to defend Peter, he can do it himself, but we have put, I myself had that conversation, quite frankly, with them. It didn't go over well, and we don't have 2, we still have 1, but just for the sake of the conversation here, I just want you to know that we hear you. But our hands are tied, and Peter's diplomatically trying to answer you, but the chief's not here to also explain it, because you two have really articulated what the chief would say to us. And we have. I mean, I came out of the city. I would love if we had the dogs all the time. But we've asked that in the past, and they have to call from all other counties.
It doesn't
and
cost
it's
any money.
Then we need to have the chief, a conversation with the chief to make that happen.
Somebody needs to be here.
I
That
love
rests
the
on-
idea.
That rests on the board.
Have you guys met with the chief to say, come on board, we're concerned
I-
with the school committee?
That's not my job.
But we can do that after tonight.
Someone from the police department should be here tonight.
Well, you know, Peter already explained that that's not here, so you
No, I
can change that.
get that, but someone dropped the ball there.
Well, it wasn't over here.
Peter, we're not accusing you, we're nobody's here, we're just trying to express our concerns as parents, that's what we are.
And I want to hear them, I want to have a
Right, we
conversation.
appreciate it,
but-
I'm sure there's a lot of parents here that can express more what their
But
concerns
some of
too.
the stuff you're asking me, I'm not the chief of police, I can't answer.
But you're responsible for my child when I bring him to school every day, so that's who I need to go to.
And you have a memorandum of understanding.
Yep.
And it says right in it, you guys are working together. Follow up. You just said it.
Yep, I agree, I agreed.
One other comment, I agree with Chris, what he said earlier about the Facebook page, as far as not a two-way thing. I know there's I think I'm reading up on some stuff about a app, about the see something, say something thing for anonymous tip, especially be helpful for the middle school, high school kids. And I think that is something the school should look into, and access to by the school resource officer, because he has the ability to do the follow-up and check databases and track kids. I just wanted to comment on Chris's thing. I think that's a good idea.
Thank you for your comments and concerns.
So,
There was someone else who had their
Thank
hand
you.
up?
Thanks.
I have to
Yes.
say that, oh.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I also obviously have children in the schools, and I share these concerns, and I am on the school councils at a couple of our different schools, and I do think we've reached out quite a few times. I know I sit on the high school council, and we've reached out to ask them to come to meetings. So I do think that we, as a board and as administration in the school, are trying to do our part, but it's a two-way relationship.
no, I agree, but there's some type of breakdown somewhere if they're not here.
Right, I don't think Peter wants to badmouth anybody. You know what I mean?
No, I
I don't think anyone is.
No,
Right,
no,
I-
but that's what I'm saying, like, you know, by
Okay.
saying, I don't know.
I think it's time to move on from this
No,
discussion.
I know, I'm not saying that he is, I'm just saying, like, he can't answer why, of course, he has definitely said you have to come to meetings, you know what I mean, like, but he can't do it, he can't bring him here himself.
No, I
Okay,
understand.
Right.
excuse me, I think we've been this, we've gone around, and I think it's time to end this discussion, and we do have another person that would like to
Absolutely.
make a comment or ask a question. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
It's okay, I'd just like to stand here.
But could you tell us who you are, please?
My name is Daniel Morley. I also have 2 kids that go to the Abington schools. Before I get into the security aspect of what I want to talk about, Chris, was it? Yeah. Well, I think Chris was trying to more or less say he wanted to use the Facebook page as a bulletin, info bulletin, not so much a community discussion page.
No, I don't want
Just,
it to be
just,
discussion
just more or less to get you, for you guys to get information out to people.
I don't want it to be discussion.
Okay, and I agree with it. Couple things. When you said that the police have done active shooting, tactical, counter-tactic training in other buildings, you can't have them train at another place. They gotta train in the environment. The U.S. military, they didn't send their troops down to South America to go to train to fight in the desert. You gotta be in the right theater, practice like you play. So they definitely have to get in here. I don't know what has to be done to get them in here. They gotta get in here and practice where they're gonna play. Or not play.
And I don't disagree, I don't disagree with you.
Play all words on it.
I don't disagree with you. I was trying to answer the question of what I know they've done, and I agree with
Okay.
what you're saying.
When you mentioned that you don't want to give away all the secrets of how we're gonna counter an attack, and that's what it is. It's an attack on our kids. The cameras are great. I don't know. This isn't something that you should let people know, but if it isn't already part of the technology, these cameras, if they're not already, should be linked to the police department. So if we have a situation, the police department can pull up, and that can be ground zero. The person, the dispatcher, whomever's in the headquarters can pull up the cameras, having a tactical advantage against whoever the perpetrator is, and they can communicate to the people that are inside here. So they have eyes in the sky. They have an advantage. It could reduce the time to find the person in the school. If it's already there, that's great. If it's not, someone should look into it. Like, I can't imagine it'd be that expensive to install a transmitter so the information be sent over there. And that's pretty much all I really had to say. I mean, everybody says shooter, shooter, shooter. It doesn't matter whether they have a gun, it's an AR-15, a pistol, a shotgun. It could be a machete. It could be a knife. It could be a bomb. It could be anything. The fact of the matter is, there's people out there that might try to get into the school. My concern is, you can do everything you can to deter it. My concern is, what are we going to do once they're in the school? Because banning guns, okay, fine, you're banning guns. The person still wants to kill people. They'll find another weapon. It's what we do once they're inside here. The infrastructure, the coordination, that's what we need to do. Enough of the ban this, ban that. We got to just say, this is the way of the world. We all hate the fact that it can happen. But it can, and it has. And unfortunately, it's probably going to happen again. I hate to say it, it's going to happen again. It's what we do once it happens to stop it. It's all great to try to make it so it doesn't happen. But that's just, let's face it, it's not the way of the world. What we do as a community to minimize the damage once some nut job decides to attack our children. We need to be ready for it, and we need to stop it as quickly as we can. And in my eyes, it's whatever means necessary. Whether it means guns with the teachers, we got to figure out a way, and it's got to be done. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Yes.
Hi, I'm Lauren Diggin. I have a 6th grader. I have a question for all of you. I didn't realize before tonight that there was a grant for 2 SROs, but we only had 1. And I do know that our department is sorely understaffed. But is this a question, the question of why there was 1 when we had funding for 2 coming from federal money, is this a question that we parents should be asking the Board of Selectmen?
Well, the funding did not come to the school. The funding goes to the police department.
Right, I understand.
So it's not something that we can actually answer for you. You could speak to the Board of Selectmen or the police department.
Those would be then 2 good places for all of us parents to be asking that question.
We don't see those dollars.
They wouldn't come to the school, they would go directly to the police department. Right, I know, but the money was there for 2 and there was only 1. So I think we as parents need to be asking why. So let's all speak up and ask.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments on this topic? Jack?
Hi, Jackie Abrams, Colonial Road. Just a quick thing back to communication and follow-up. You gave Mr. Schaefer gave a really detailed report about the way that the Abington Police Department and the Abington Public Schools communicate and follow up. And I think going back to Chris's point is really important that if not Facebook, there needs to be some additional measures to pump out information and detailed information, because there is a lot of conversations in social media, particularly Facebook, that, and I just want to sort of credit Principal Sullivan, who's here tonight, her email, and I have a 4th grader and a 1st grader, so my children are not at the high school. But when her email came out, not only was it articulate, it thoroughly addressed all the buzzing that was happening. And it immediately put, I think, a lot of community members at ease. And myself, who doesn't even have a high school child, I felt like, okay, they're thinking about what we're thinking about. And so thank you. And I think we can do a little bit better job with being proactive in the way of communication and transparency, really, and an accountable timeline. So those 2 half days that were mentioned, I've come to school committee every month. This is the first that I've heard about these days being added. I think it's great, but it'd be nice to have a long-term, thorough, detailed plan for how all of these pieces are going to play out, and that those pieces are then communicated maybe directly from your office to us parents, because I think we don't always get those details, and we don't need to know the specifics about what drills are being done necessarily, but I think we all feel at ease when we hear the details of the timeline. That's really
Thank you. Is there someone else had their hand up? Yes, sir.
You mentioned that we're going to go to Alice training, an Alice certified instructor too. And I know you said we're going to implement it, get it right in the future, correct? What happens now? If this takes off next week, tomorrow there's some threat for our kids. What are we doing now for training? How are we training our kids, and what are they training? My kids don't know about a threat in the school. What are they going to do? Are we doing anything right now to teach them the threat? I know we do fire drills.
Yep. We drill.
Every month, whenever they come in, the fire department come in, did a fire alarm test. That's great. What are we doing with the other part? Have we done anything yet?
We drill the current plan that we have in place, which is coordinated with both police and fire at least twice a year, in addition to the fire drills and the bus evacuation drills and those other plans.
No, I'm sorry. With our kids.
Yep.
Yes.
My kids.
Your children, unless they were absent on those days, they've done them every year, twice a year.
What's the age group are we?
All kids in the Abington Public Schools, twice a year in every single building, drill this.
So we haven't done anything to show that there's a threat, how to get out, or at least talk to them about getting out of a window or anything, or?
We do the drill that we have in place and coordinated with the kids. Yes, we do.
Okay, so no then. We haven't done anything then.
We haven't done Alice.
Okay. Well, Alice is just an option, as
Right.
you're well aware. Alice is not what's going to save our kids. It's going to be the training that you provide to our kids.
I'm really trying to answer your question.
I'm just asking, I know when we implement Alice in the future, when we all get to that point,
Yep.
now and to that point, what are we doing? How are we, or what are your administrations doing to our kids? Are your teachers showing them, teaching them? Are they walking through the door? Hey, you hear shooting going on there, you hear a long firecracker, boom, boom, boom. Do you know to run this way? What, you know,
Brian.
you talk about meeting points.
Brian, right now, the policy is lockdown. Policy is, that's the standard for the schools. So that's what's being trained twice a year is the lockdown policy, which I don't know, like, back my hand, but I'm guessing it's get into a room, get there, and wait for law enforcement to neutralize the situation.
Lock the door. The doors are locked. Lock the door.
Which is, I mean, what most schools have now, and schools are starting to change, but that's what most schools have now, but that's what the current policy is, and that's what's being trained twice a year. So until there's a new policy, that's what's going to be trained twice a year.
Along with the,
When would
exactly.
the policy be implemented?
So in what I outlined previously, I talked about you need an emergency operation plan in place that's coordinated with an assessment of every single building and space in your building, so that when you're modifying and doing this new drill, that it's reflective of the buildings you have, which is one of your points, that you want to train in the environment.
The assessment for our schools, or are they already been done?
We've done those assessments around the current plan we have in place, but those assessments have to be done when you put a new response in place. Okay. You have to think about the assessment differently because you have a new plan in place. So that's all being done. We're doing that. We're starting that process now.
Okay.
We just got trained at the end of last week because we scheduled these in November. This was prior to the Florida tragedy. We were going down this path, and then the Florida tragedy occurred, obviously. Then after that takes place, you create this plan with the police and the fire so you can coordinate your responses. Then you've got to do, well, you're a trainer, you know what you've got to do. You've got to do, there's a, I don't know if you've taken it so recently that you've done the online learning component. Then you do that, that takes between 45 minutes and an hour. Then there are PowerPoint presentations and videos that you do with staff. Then there's drills that you do with staff. Then there's drills that you do with kids. And that all takes time, and that's why I'm going to be coming back and asking for those 2 half days.
Thank you.
So.
No, that's my question.
All right, we have,
Thank you, Teresa Noble. I have a question. As far as the amount of money that's gone into the money for this new school, and we were always told the type and the topmost technology and the best everything, why wasn't a more intricate, I guess, security system put in place? And if it was, which you don't want to tell us, why weren't the drills at least done before the students started in the school? I mean, it's like the security drills and getting the police in here, letting them have the layout. Why wasn't more done before, and what is in place now that you are willing to tell us? I've seen these things on TV since Florida, and there's all kinds of security measures in other schools, not as new as this one. And this school, unless you can tell me different, it doesn't have any of some of these. And I just think the more that the potential person that might want to hurt our children, or if it is a student himself, in a lot of these cases, needs to know that there is security in each classroom, and they're either not getting out, or how, I mean, I just think the kids need to feel safer. They need to know there is more security in place in the school, and I don't feel like that's the message the kids get.
So I don't know what different measures you've seen on TV. I can say that the building does have security measures in the building. It doesn't have, I don't know exactly what you're comparing us to.
Is the glass on the doors bulletproof on any of these?
We don't have bulletproof glass.
Okay. Does each room have an alarm system that goes, or an alarm or an intercom that goes up to the office individually?
And in terms of the communication pieces, I won't get into the sophistication of the system with regard to how sophisticated it is.
I just would like to see more obvious state-of-the-art security instead of all the state-of-the-art tech. For the price tag on this building, it does, doesn't seem right.
We have drilled in this building. The police department has not done the drills that the officers described in this building.
Get them down here. And what about, all right, so if it's not in the police department's budget to fund coming out here to the schools and having more than one resource officer, even though we should have 2, well, couldn't that have been written into the new school budget as part of security for the new school, or no?
So because the police officers are police officers, with all of their training and all of the equipment, they need to be under the control of the hierarchy of a police department. They need to be police officers. In order for them to be police officers, it's all done through, all that money and everything is done through the police department. Because they're police officers. If that makes sense.
Is there a lesser version of a police officer then, a deputy or somebody that could be on the schools, or?
I think it's important to have a fully trained, licensed police officer. Police officers have the most up-to-date training. That's what we want to have. I think that was a point well taken from the officers here. So.
I'd like to say one thing. Peter mentioned earlier that he's not going to expose all of the things that we've got in this building so as not to give an advantage to anyone who wanted to come in. But I will tell you that both the fire department and the police department were on board throughout the design and the building of this building. And hopefully that would give you some reassurance that we have things in this building that will safeguard your children. Unless someone has something else that we haven't already heard before that wants to add something or ask a question, we do have the rest of the agenda that I'd like to get to. I have one hand that's up.
I'm sorry, just something quick. If the budgets are, the way the budgets are set up now between school and police, if they're not working the way the financials are set up now, perhaps maybe next year when we go over the budgets, maybe the school department might need to allocate some money for security, some extra money for security, if it's there. I mean, me personally, I wouldn't mind if my taxes went up a little bit, if I knew that the money was going. Just updates, better security, so my kids are safe. You know, I mean, I don't know how, that's just something out there. The budgets aren't working the way they are. Maybe they have to everybody needs to look and maybe realign the budgets.
I think it's really important for the police department to, you know, own their budget, and the town to own the money that the police department has. And the reason for that is because, just kind of alluded to here, the training that the officers who spoke to us about, that's very sophisticated training that it needs to be coordinated by police departments. You know, I do teachers and algebra books, and that I need our police officers to be state of the art with their responses and their trainings. That's why the money has to flow through a police department, because they allocate those funds. I want as many well-trained police officers as possible, and I got to say this too, because there's been a lot of talk about, you know, rushing into a hail of bullets. God bless them for being the only one that shows up on a scene, and they're supposed to run into someone who might be, you know, better armed than they are, and put their lives in jeopardy to save us. I'll take as many of those people around our kids as we can get, but their training and their schedule, that all has to be done and coordinated through the police department, because they have the best eye on the risk assessment for your entire community. But we'll take as many as we can get.
Thank you. Let's continue on. The next thing that we're looking at is proposed start times for the 2018-19 school year. Excuse me, did you have a question?
I did, yeah. But
I'm sorry.
I didn't want to tie anybody up. My only question was about the, I was wondering if any notifications have been made to the people that work in this front office about letting people in. Beginning of the year, I came to dismiss my daughter because she was sick. I can't remember why. But all I did was hit the doorbell, told them who I was, and they buzzed me in. So my concern is that if someone wanted to get in this building, they would only have to know the name of someone and say that they're the parent. So I was wondering if those people down there that are working there in the mornings, the afternoons, has anything changed with that? And the second part of that question would be the perimeter doors that are always open, because I know not everybody comes in the front door. So those doors are wide open. Could someone come in if they wanted to do some damage there? Or? Once
the students are in, those are all locked. So it's only during the time when the students are coming in the morning that they're unlocked. And then the point of entry after they're all locked is that main entrance, and it's a buzz-in entry, so you can see the person as they come in.
You can see them through a little camera. But I mean, what I'm saying is, if someone wanted to come in, wouldn't it be easy for them to get in?
So,
I'm wondering if anything has changed.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't be able to put a system in place where you'd have to, you know, like identify your name, and then we'd look up, you know, or look you up as you come in.
Some sort of IDs for the parents, show an ID to the camera system.
There's a sign-in process once you get into that main office.
Once you're in, though.
Right. Well, and they're the front line. So if you're exhibiting a behavior that's, or carrying something, or, you know, they're the first person to sound the alarm.
I don't feel confident with that, you know. No offense to the people that work
No.
there, but you don't have, you know, a resource officer there all the time.
True.
Right? So.
And if someone's decided they're gonna, you know, dress normally and disguise themselves to get in front entry, we're vulnerable.
Right. Is it, am I hearing it correctly that there's only one resource officer for all the schools in the town, so?
Yes.
That doesn't really make sense. I know it costs money, obviously, but I'd feel better if there was one at each school.
Yeah, me too.
That would be something that would have to come through the police department budget, to budget for additional officers. So that.
I think we all feel that we could pay a lot of money in taxes here. So I know I do.
But I think it's important to state that we've had none until
I understand.
recently.
Yeah, I
So
lived
we're
in Florida.
making
Yeah.
some inroads, certainly not, you
Yeah.
know, where other districts may be at, but I think it really comes down to funding and their ability. I mean, the chief would want to give us as much as he could. But I do think that that's important to state is we've come from none. I mean, I've been in 4 other districts, or 3 other districts, and, you know, SROs have been around for a long time, over 20-something years. And Abington has only gotten on board with SROs in the last, was it 2 years now? 2 years, at least since I've been here, what, 11? And so we are making some progress, but clearly there's progress still to be made. But I think that all of you coming out tonight is a testament to how great the community is, but I do think that there's a larger voice that also needs to be heard at town meeting or within the town, because your voice and where your funds want to be spent, you know, is also, should be heard there.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Will this be more of a question for the town manager then? I know I keep saying the police department, about the budget, and everything else. I mean,
That's another avenue. That's another good avenue.
if we're short staffed, and he should be allocating, you know, figuring out these budgets and trying to work with you in for something better.
As taxpayers, that's another avenue to you. Town manager, board of selectmen, police department.
Again, is this something like he can come to a meeting? Is that something the board can suggest?
Well, I-
Go to town meeting.
No, I know that, but.
He's at the selectmen's meeting.
Yep.
Talking about budgeting processes and employment.
It's probably the type of discussion you want to see at a selectmen's meeting, and that can be arranged through the town manager's office. Okay. Proposed start times for the 2018-2019 school year.
So you have a copy of an updated presentation. We've done PowerPoints, but we knew we'd have a lot of people here today. And the PowerPoint screen is over there, and so we did it over here and made a handout. We also made it for people that have really great eyes to try to save. The last time we met, we talked through all of these options, and we spent a lot of time just getting to the last time we met and all of these options. A lot of time behind the scenes with school personnel, a lot of times behind the scenes with school administration, bus routes, company. Felicia's got scrap paper all over the place with circles and arrows trying to calculate these things. And then since the last meeting, I want to recognize Chris and Wendy, who have a lot of scrap paper around the floors at their houses because they spent a lot of time coming up with a lot of different scenarios for us, including some adjustments to these scenarios. So the scenarios here are the same that you saw before, except for option 3, which is the recommended option.
On my notes, Peter.
Do you want to just describe
Yeah,
this? And Felicia's going to describe to you the adjustments that were made to this option 3 from the last time you saw it.
So the change to Beaver, we made a slight change to Beaver Brook, and that was to start by 5 minutes. So Beaver Brook starting at 9 o'clock and ending at 3:05, which then makes a 20-minute difference between the Woodsdale and Beaver Brook as opposed to 25. And the second change is actually an addition, and that is to the Abington Early Education Program pre-K times, and to add those in, and those times are 8:20 to 10:55 for the morning session, and 11:35 to 2:10 for the afternoon session.
All right. Anyone have any questions or comments? All right, as option 3 is the recommended option, we're looking for a motion to approve the start and end times for the 2018-2019 school year as presented in option 3.
Wait, can we talk about this for a
Yes,
minute?
that's why
I'm
I
sorry.
asked.
I was trying to read. like, I just want to know what, maybe from parents, like what you guys think of option 3. Does anybody have anything to say?
Could you identify yourself, please?
Or any of the
My name's
options?
Dan Fish. I am parent of a couple of little kids.
A couple of little
and
kids.
I also am a high school teacher in a different district. And from my experience with high school students and with little kids wake up early, high school students wake up late, and our school it's the complete opposite of what is normal for children. In terms of how they naturally wake up, little kids wake up early, naturally. And high school kids want to sleep all day. And so the fact that it's completely switched from that seems a little weird to me.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
So I'm really glad you asked this question, because everything you said about sleep patterns and what we would want to do and what the high school council spent a lot of time on was doing exactly what you said. And the reasons that it's difficult to do with this, and the reason it's flip-flopped, is because we have buses that do multiple runs. So one bus will do a loop. They'll do one school, then they'll do another school, then they'll do another school. The reason that we do that is because the less equipment we have, the cheaper it is for us to run transportation. And do people want to put a lot of money into having, I'll do an approximate. Do you want to have 30 buses or 15? 30 buses is a lot of money when you can do it with 15 with those loops. So to flip these loops around would mean that when you flip the middle school, for example, with the high school, because what you have here with Bedford and Glenowitz is a choke point. And so if you flip the middle school and the high school, so the high school's coming later, you've got our 5th and 6th graders at bus stops before 7 o'clock in the morning, as early as 6:45 in the morning with the current high school schedule. And having those 5th and 6th graders out at bus stops that early in the dark, especially that time of year when it's that dark, the snow and the banks, the road is narrow at a time when the plow trucks take up the maximum amount of room in our streets. We're worried about those kids at those bus. I'm worried about those kids in particular at those bus stops that early. That's probably the biggest sticking point. The money it costs to run all of the additional buses to make it work the way we would want, the way you described, and then having those younger students at those bus stops that early is why this avoids that.
I'm just going to second that opinion. I also teach high school in a different district, and I also believe that the best thing for the students is to have the younger kids starting earlier and the older kids starting later. We haven't had that issue with the kids. Same thing happens is that the younger kids go out to the bus stops earlier, and we haven't had any problems. So if it's at all possible, just from experience.
Chris and I have, with Peter, have gone over many different scenarios, and like Peter said, we try to come up with some on our own. For Beaverbrook and Woodsdale, I would love to see them starting earlier at like 8 o'clock, but we've tried so many different things, and it just doesn't work. But I feel like if the middle school or if the elementary school, if we were able to work that out, then maybe more parents would be able to drop their kids off. And as far as standing outside, I don't think anybody really is going to let their child stand outside alone at 6:45. That's, in 4th, 5th grade anyway. Or you'll have more parents watching. I'm not for option 3. I'm actually for option 1 because it just, after speaking with Mr. Haas, he wants to start between 8:15 and 8:30. I know Beaverbrook, I would love to see them starting earlier, but it just doesn't happen. The high school has continuously said that they want to start later. And talking to teachers at the middle school and a lot of students, they'd like to start earlier. I think 7:25 is a little too early, but I don't know. I just think that I would like to look at this again next year to see if maybe the busing situation would change. We get more money somehow, but personally for me, I'm going with option 1.
Kathy, can I talk for a second?
Yes, Chris, go ahead.
So as Peter's mentioned, I've worked on a lot. I've tried to come up with different things. I echo the sentiment. I have only elementary school kids. I wish they could start earlier. Every option I tried to come up with was the elementary starting earlier. The biggest problem I found is number of buses, because I'm not ready to take 50 to 100 grand away from somewhere else in our budget for another bus. And the fact that the secondary schools are in session 27 minutes longer than the elementary schools. So it's easy to set this up for the morning, to set up the gaps for the buses. Where the problem becomes is when you have a bus doing middle school and Beaverbrook, and that's a situation we're kind of under. All the buses at Beaverbrook essentially service the middle school as well. So when they do that, you can have the gap in the morning, but then when middle school goes 30 minutes later, you don't have that gap in the afternoon for them to service both. And I think if there's any Beaverbrook parents here now, they know what happened in the afternoon this year. So we're trying to fix that. I'm comfortable with this option 3 as of right now. I do support this option 3 now. They gave me 5 minutes on Beaverbrook. I've said this to Felicia and Peter when we talked. I really don't want to set that we're gonna quote unquote revisit this every year. I would just ask that as you get the information in, you start to see how the buses are working. It's another year of this situation out on Glennett's Way, that if you see something that makes sense to make changes, then just keep it in mind as it's going on. So that was kind of where I am. So, and I asked about 40 people that I knew, and 60% of them were, out of the 3 options that we had, felt option 3 was the best choice for them. So kind of where I am is I'm trying to represent people, even if it's not maybe the best for me, that people I've talked to, option 3 is the best for them. Knowing that everybody, I'd like every school to start between 8 and 8:30. It's not feasible in this town with the budget that we have to work with, so.
Beck.
Don P. some room, I don't know the name, sorry. I just have a quick question. You keep talking buses and buses. I have a student at Woodsdale and Beaverbrook, and Beaverbrook she's a special needs child on a van. Will they have to go find other vans now? Because we've had issues where she's still at another school in another town, so they do other towns too? When you change the times here, what happens then?
I have spoke with our current provider around these school times, and if that company can't provide all of our in-district transportation, then we can contract with another provider.
Are there any other questions?
Hi, I'm Melissa Cook. I have 2 little ones in Beaverbrook. I know it's not going to change, but I just wanted to, I just hate, I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I feel like I get my kids so late.
Yeah.
And I just absolutely
After 4 o'clock,
hate it. We're late, we have CCD in Rockland on Monday, we're late every single Monday. We have some after-school activities, our days like jammed because they're getting out so late. I feel rushed like half my week. I just, like I said, I'm a stay-at-home mom. My kids, I want this time with them, and I feel like it's just been taken, like I don't have my afternoons with my kids anymore. And it makes me sad, and I know probably, it's not gonna change, but I just wanted to, I don't know, maybe next year or at some point, just kind of voice my opinion on the matter. So I don't know, hopefully, like you said, like when you said, maybe next year we'll revisit. I know it's probably something that doesn't want to be revisited, but just to me, it doesn't even make sense to have the smallest kids getting out like the latest.
Right.
For a 5-year-old to get home at 4 o'clock, I just think isn't fair.
Right. And they go to bed at like 7:30, so you're spending,
So you
3
lose
hours
that
with your
time.
kids
Yeah.
between dinner,
And
sports.
when you say high school start later, Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, you can't go, I know you're 4, but you can't go beyond 8:15 either, right? 8:15 is the latest you could probably start, right?
Probably.
Yeah. Okay.
Is after school activities.
Right, I understand, I just wanted you to confirm what I was saying.
I personally could.
Yeah, I was hoping you didn't change your mind, because that's what we thought.
We hear you, and we appreciate all your comments and all your feelings. And if we had an unlimited budget, we could start any school at any particular period of time. And you know what would also find out? If we had unlimited budget and we set time schedules, there would be people whose home schedules it still wouldn't fit. But we could do a whole lot better if we had an unlimited budget. But I can't see taking money from academics to pay for buses. And that's basically what we're looking for here. To do the best we can to make the traffic patterns work and provide busing without hurting academics. That's the balancing act we're doing, and we can't please everybody. Yes.
Rachel Collins, 74 Orange Street, and I have one at Beaverbrook and one that'll be at Beaverbrook in 2 years. My question is, as we've kind of condensed our schools where we have middle school and high school together, even though they're separate schools and they're separate start times, by having less buildings, have we noticed any savings in the buses? By not having like Center School, Beaverbrook, Woodsdale, Folio,
It actually cost us a little more money.
Has it made any difference where people are in different places in the town where they get to things like closer?
Yeah, it actually
Again, we're exactly a mile from school, so I'm going to be dropping off.
No, it's a good question. In terms of transportation, it's actually cost us a little bit more money, but I'll let Felicia answer that.
Well, part of it is that we have seen an increase in ridership, and we have seen, we used to transport 7 through 12 together, and now we transport the high school as one, and then 5 through 8. So we have some mandated, some pay. So there's more buses that do the middle school run, and then you add Woodsdale and Beaverbrook. So we actually have not seen a decrease. Okay. Part of this year, and part of the proposal and part of what I worked on, or we worked on, was so that kids aren't going to get home at 4 o'clock. That the dismissal at Beaverbrook being at 3:05. That the buses that will be, part of the issue is the buses are getting to Beaverbrook after dismissal, and then it's that much longer to get home. So part of what we've looked at is enough time to get the buses over there to Beaverbrook and the Woodsdale, those that are shared, and having an earlier dismissal. Yeah. So I think both of those things combined are going to make a big difference at the end of the day.
So, like, statistically speaking, kids are safe on the bus. They're driving. They're giant vehicles. Now, God forbid, I don't want to have a bus accident tomorrow. But they're these giant orange vehicles that for the most part are off the highway. I think they're obviously more dangerous when they're traveling at a high rate of speed on the highway, but when they're traveling slowly through a town, they're safe. And they limit our congestion in terms of kids coming and going to school, and kids show up on time generally when they're on the bus unless there's bad weather. Having said that, so that's why we want more people to use the bus, but that does cost us more money because the money that you pay for the bus doesn't pay for the bus. It offsets the cost of the bus, if that makes any sense. There's still budget money that goes into every single bus that runs. So.
Okay. I hope everyone's had. Is there someone I missed?
I was just going to say that I also agree with the later start time for the older children and the earlier start time for the younger ones.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Laura Zimmerman. I live on Old Farm Road. I have a kindergartner at Beaverbrook, and then I also have a 3rd grader at Woodsdale. I know it's going to be hard with this time change to make everyone happy, probably totally impossible, because I think it depends on, like you said, being a stay-at-home mom. I'm a working parent, so is my husband. So again, I know you can't please everyone. One thing I think I would say is that, I don't know, I think for working parents, maybe once a time is decided on, maybe just sticking with that time rather than reevaluating year after year, because I think that's going to be difficult for, next year it's going to be this, and then the following year, and then you have to start looking at before or after care, changing your work schedule. So it's just kind of my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. At this point, we do have to take a vote because people need to know when their children are going to be going to school. I'm looking for a motion to approve the start and end times for the 2018-2019 school year as presented in option 3.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
No.
Opposed?
Aye.
No.
I oppose.
All right. The vote passes with 1 against. Okay. Consideration of the 2018-2019 school calendar.
So, the only change that you're going to be handed is that this lists the pre-K Abington Early Education Program last day of school. So there's no change in dates or anything like that. This calendar, I'm not going to ask you for a vote on it tonight because, as you heard, I'm likely going to. Oh, this is for next year.
This is next year. Yeah.
Until we square away the exact end of school this year with the training, there's nothing lost in waiting another school committee meeting for you to actually consider this one. But this one does provide an earlier start for kindergarten. This one has our professional development day on election day. And I'm going to ask you if you'd wait another month and take any questions you have.
And if anyone on a committee has any questions between now and our next meeting and they want to contact Peter so that we can vote this calendar at the next meeting, that would be helpful. All right. Report of the Assistant Superintendent for Pupil Personnel Services. Debna.
Hi, thank you. So all the items I have this evening are going to be informational. There's no motion to approve. I want to first start off with the Title I Coordinated Program Review results. We were congratulated by the DESE for doing outstanding work, and we were highlighted regarding the family engagement policy, so that's a real positive, which is really nice to hear. And there's no findings, which means that everything was in compliance with Title I regulations. So I really would like to thank our Title I team, particularly Adrian Whalen, who's the director of Title I, our administrators, Catherine Zinni, and everyone who really worked closely with Title I and making sure that everything was uploaded and in compliance.
Good.
So that's great news. The next piece is you have the sample letter that Dr. Terry Sullivan and Mr. Matt McCurtain will be sending home. And it's regarding the ESPER. Looks like this. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so I don't know if you had the opportunity to read it or I can read it to you, but basically this year all Massachusetts school districts are required to include a substance use preventative screening as part of their annual mandated universal health screening program. And our district will use the screening, the brief intervention and referral to treatment, which is also the acronym is SPURT, protocol with students in grades 7 and 9. The SPURT protocol facilitates a one-to-one or one-on-one conversation between each student and a school nurse or counselor in an effort to prevent or at least delay the start of using harmful substances such as alcohol and marijuana. This program focuses on reinforcing healthy decisions and addressing concerning behaviors around substance use with the goal of improving healthy, safety, and success in school. We will use the CRAFT 2 screening interview, which is the most commonly used substance for the screening tool for adolescents in Massachusetts, and all screenings will be conducted in a confidential setting in a private one-on-one session with one of the nurses or counselors trained in SPURT screening. Students who are not using substances will have their healthy choices reinforced. The screener will provide brief feedback to any student who reports using substances or is determined to be at risk for future substance use. What your child tells the screener is confidential and will not be shared with any other person without prior written consent of the student, parent, or guardian, except in cases of immediate medical emergency or when disclosure is otherwise required by state law. No written record of the results of this verbal screening are kept with information that identifies any individual student, and then screening results will not be included in your child's school record. So the students, parents, or guardians may opt out of the screening by written notification at any time prior to or during the screening, and students may also opt out at the time of the screening. So please feel free to contact us should you have any questions or would like your child to opt out of the screening. Together, schools and parents can make a difference for the youth in our community, and one way to prevent youth substance use is to talk with your child about your thoughts and your expectations regarding substance use. You can view the CRAFT tool and the SPURT resources, and then they give the website And then also for your information, is both our school nurses at the middle school and at the high school are both trained. So that's Donna Conzo, and we also have Joan Smith. So those dates will be determined. Do you have anything to add? Does that matter, Terry? Nothing that would be appropriate. We're going to move right along. Any questions on that? No. Bottom line is there's opt-out, and the child can do it, and I think really Massachusetts is, you probably heard the governor last night, a big supporter of trying to, really help the opiate crisis, but this is now mass law, and it's an effort to really hopefully work with our students on healthy choices, and then if there are supports that they need, then we're here to help them throughout that process. And we already do all of that for kids that are identified. So I think it's healthy, but there's always the opt-out for the student and for the family. So any questions on that? Okay, great. Professional development updates. We have a lot going on, especially we have MCAS Next Gen that's coming up, so there's a lot of preparation that's happening in our schools. We have department meetings, we have the coordinated program review, we have NEASC starting this week. There's a lot going on, and it's been going on for the last 2 years, but we're also simultaneously, as Peter Schaefer discussed, the ALICE training. That's the topic of conversation regarding the rollout, and we're working together with the other departments within the town, so there'll be more to come on that. And then we're continuing with our curriculum alignment and then our technology initiatives. So any questions on professional development? Okay. And then coordinated program review updates. So it's finally here. March 8th, they'll be coming for the record review, so that's right around the corner. And then March 26th to the 28th, they'll be doing all the site visits, and so they'll be in and out of schools. I've already done the presentations at the schools, getting people just having the conversation about what to expect. The schedule will be going out regarding certain staff members that will be interviewed, and I'll be having meetings with those that group of individuals that will also be interviewed. But we really have a really nice DESE auditor. Deb's already come for an orientation with us and has been very helpful, and also she'll be back on May 8th, and then March 8th, and then March 26th to the 28th. So more to come on that, and I'll let you know how it goes. Special Education Parent Advisory Committee meeting. Hopefully all of you saw, yes, the flyer that has gone out March 1st, 2018 from 6:30 to 8 at the Abington Middle High School. All parents with children in the Abington Public School District are welcome to attend regardless of their child's needs. This is an opportunity to come out and meet your new Abington CPAC officers in an informal and positive environment. So I would like to thank the chairperson, Jane Coyle, vice chairperson, Amy Kellstrand, and secretary, Harla Meneses, for volunteering and their willingness to lead this. So I'm really hoping that as many people can attend. And they're really trying to highlight that even though the acronym stands for Special Education Parent Advisory Committee meeting, it's really important that even if you're concerned about your child in general education, they're going to help you navigate and work through whether it's testing or referrals, etc. So, any questions on that? All right. My sections are going great tonight. Wellness committee is really quick because yesterday we were supposed to have wellness committee meeting. However, the director of wellness, Kate Casey, was not able to hold it because of the hockey tournament or playoff game that we won. So it's all good. However, there will be more to come in the future regarding the wellness committee, and that's a really nice group of people that come together, different key stakeholders and constituents from the community, trying to really work with the school department and also community regarding some wellness efforts. So more to come on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
No one told you when you might here.
All right, next, report of the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Finance.
All right.
Alicia.
I have the Abington Public Schools Facilities Action Goal to review, and you have that in your packet. The strategic goal in the, for the Strategic Action Plan is to provide state-of-the-art facilities. And the first few objectives were around completing a new state-of-the-art building, which obviously we have completed. So I'm going to call your attention to the 4th strategic goal. You'll see some new goals, and you'll see a status update on some of the other goals. So the goal is to provide state-of-the-art facilities. The strategic objective is to continue to avail ourselves of alternative funding sources for maintenance and upgrades of school facilities. The first action step, if you were here on one of 3 Saturdays in January, you saw cranes lifting materials onto the roof, which may have impacted your travel around the building. We are currently in the building phase of a solar array on the roof of this building. It is planned to be substantially complete by the end of March, which means that we will start reaping the benefits from that in April, theoretically. We also are engaged in a power purchasing agreement to buy solar, and that's with the town on a solar array that is off-site. And so we've been working with the town on that, and actually this month we saw our first benefit to our electric bill with that solar. And we also really just want to, we've obviously spent a lot of money and time on grades 5 through 12 in a pre-K, and we do have some additional work that we want to have done in the Woodsdale and the Beaverbrook. The first is to continue to improve internet access and Wi-Fi access at both the Beaverbrook and the Woodsdale, and that is currently being upgraded through E-rate program, which is a federally funded technology initiative. And so we're increasing the Wi-Fi access points at both of those buildings. And along with that, with increased technology needs increased electricity and available outlets. So we have our maintenance director is actually a master electrician, and which works out great because he's available to do a lot of that work in-house. And with the new phone system that was put into this building, it was also extended out into the rest of the district. So we have a new phone system district-wide, which has provided phones in all of our classrooms with outside lines. So that has been a huge benefit across the district for every classroom. And I think that's it, unless you have any.
Aren't you going to do your school building update?
That was just on this.
Oh, all right.
Building update. Someday I won't have a new school building update. New school building update, really, until the weather turns, we won't be seeing the fields, until there's a consistent good weather for the contractor to work out the new field, they won't mobilize all their equipment to complete that front field. So I anticipate in March at some point they'll be out there working on the field. You also may have noticed on snowy days and on rainy days that we have some areas around the building that we've had significant puddling and ice buildup. We've been working with the site engineer. We actually have a meeting on Friday with some recommended remediation plans around that. So that is something that is especially near the pre-K entrance. The two of huge note are pre-K entrance and then over on the middle school side, kind of when you're exiting the back roadway. So we're working with them on that. We are also continuing to work with the flooring contractor over some flooring issues that have been continuous, more visual problems with that. So that is something that we've been that we continue to work on. And that's it.
Anyone have any questions for Felicia?
We're on budget and on time. Oh, no.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
New business and establishing of the next school committee meeting date for March 27th, 2018 at 7 p.m. Do we have informational items you want to go over?
You've already seen the North River Collaborative quarterly report. That's redundant. You already had that. new items here that I want to highlight to you? Yeah, I do. If you'll bear with me, I promise I'll keep it short. I know it's been a long meeting. So you've also got a communication from Mike Dorado, the Director of Art, regarding our Scholastic Art Awards. All of the students here recognized. I've already sent them congratulation letters along to the art department. You've also got a letter here to Senator John Keenan in some of the work that we did going to the State House and advocating for education. The Senator's office was able to earmark an additional $25,000 for us to buy curriculum materials. We're going to be buying Spanish textbooks with that money. That's long overdue. And I think you've seen the communication from me with regard to the situation in Florida that went out on Friday of that week. And then a press release with regard to the coordinated program review. Didn't already mention the special education advisory parent meeting that was there. And then I'm going to cover this under dates to remember, but you also have the Abington Education Foundation's LCR tournament information that's coming up on Friday. Saturday, March 3rd at 7 p.m. at Emerald Hall. It's the Knights of Columbus. Sorry, I was reading the flyer, had to type. So, new dates to remember?
Mm-hmm.
So, dates to remember, thank you. Thursday, March 1st, we have a Special Education Parent Advisory Committee meeting at Abington Middle School at 6:30, at the high school middle school at 6:30. As I said, we've got the LCR tournament at the Knights of Columbus Hall at 7 p.m. on Saturday. We have a building committee meeting that's not listed here on March 6th here in this room at 6 p.m. On March 7th, we have the Green Wave Boosters meeting at Abington High School at 7 p.m. March 8th is an in-service early release day. March 23rd is the Green Wave Boosters Teamwork Trivia Night at the Knights of Columbus Hall at 7 p.m. And then we have our regularly scheduled school committee meeting on March 27th. Thanks.
No problem. All right, we're going to adjourn for...
Yes.
All right, I'd like a motion to adjourn to go into executive session by roll call vote.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All right, Chris?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
I say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, we'll be going into executive session, not to return to regular session. Thank you, everyone, for coming.